Good morning and welcome to the 14th of April episode of Java with Josh, where I'm going to start taking us through this CASP Plus book by Mark Birch, put out by Pact, our kind of sponsor for this session. I'm Josh Mason. I'm a Red Team instructor for INE, and little background on me, just to set this whole thing up. I have my CISP. I was a cyber warfare officer for the United States Air Force, following a great few years as a C-130 pilot for the United States Air Force. I've been out of the Air Force for a couple years now. I worked as an instructor at the Defense Cybercrime Center's Cyber Training Academy, training up your OSI and NCIS agents, FBI agents in digital forensics and criminal investigations, utilizing cyber assets, if you will. Also trained up then cyber protection teams, U.S. military members who are part of red and blue purple teams. Ooh, I will check out that delay. Looks like my stream is good, so keep a head up on that. Chris, tell me if it gets worse. With my background, I have helped build up the penetration testing student pathway at INE, and today there should be a release about the new course and what's going to be in it, as well as what's going to be in the new EJPT. Truth be told, parts of it are going to look very similar. The overall structure of it hasn't changed terribly, but the interface, the machines, have all been updated, and I think they make a little bit more sense. They're a little bit more user-friendly. So I think you'll like that. Alexei Ahmed and Hackersploit, and I have been working on that for a while. 1 second, I'm going to try something. Okay. Did that fix my delay at all? I see there are a ton of you in LinkedIn, as well as the Joshua17SC YouTube channel, and a few on the Cyber Insecurity YouTube channel. I have my moderator on the Cyber Insecurity channel, and if we're not going to run any giveaways today, I not set up for that. This is going to be a kind of a strange take on this course, but my moderators might time you out, might ban you if you spam chat, if you say anything racist, misogynistic, or toxic. We want to make this an open environment for people to learn and be part of the community. If you have an issue with what my moderators have done, you can talk with them on Discord and have that discussion there. I trust my moderators explicitly, and if what they say is final, take it up with them. Feel free to jump on Discord. Looks like our bot isn't working, but Chris, if you don't mind dropping the link to Discord just so people know. Appreciate that. What I want to do with these next few weeks, I'm going to try it out today, see how it goes. This is a study session. I have taught many courses. I have taught this course a few times before, live in person as well as live over the web. And when I've taught it live over the web, it's usually like a 2-week course, 8 hours a day, knocking everything out. By the end, people can build an architecture. I didn't want to teach a course here for 2 reasons. One, I am an instructor for INE, and this is a CompTIA course, and I kind of have this non-compete thing, and we want to follow that. So what I'm going to do instead is I have this book that I was given by Pact to read and review, and I've gone through it quickly and gotten some pieces out of it, but I thought it would be interesting to study alongside you all and go through it. If you want the book, I think I've got a link in the comments below on YouTube. Not sure about LinkedIn, but if you go to, there's only one of these right now by Mark Birch. There's very few CASP CAS-004, the new book, the new exam. I think CompTIA's official one doesn't even come out till this coming August, and you can no longer take the CAS-003 as of last week. So this is kind of it. I'm going to go through some of the pieces that Mark has put in this. We're going to go chapter by chapter and discuss some things. And it is open discussion. So if you have questions, throw them into chat. But I'm going to start at the beginning, build some things up, talk from my experience, and cover some of the things that I think are useful, worthwhile, interesting, and that need to be remembered, especially if we're going to take this exam at the end, which is my plan. I've also gone through, I'll tell you, the CompTIA instructor networks, train the trainer, and I'll admit there wasn't really anything I learned out of that. At this point, I've taught this stuff before, so I wasn't learning, but there was like, oh yeah, that's an interesting perspective. I'll make sure to bring that up. Not to boast, but this is good stuff, and hopefully you get something out of it. All right, so let me share with you. So I have the book here, but really what I want to share with you all, I'm going to switch that out, is we have the graphics from the book. And let me make this bigger so it fills the screen a little more. All right. At the end of the first chapter, Mark gives us this great case study. And initially, first it is a blank kind of network diagram here that then we place all of these items in. I'm going to cheat, and we're going to start from the back and move our way forward. And I was so ready to make slides and build out a whole thing for this, and realized I was basically going to be building a training course if I did it that way, which is my normal go-to. It's not what I wanted to do here. It's also a different level of effort than I wanted to put into this, if you will. We'll see how this goes. I am open for feedback. So hit me up on LinkedIn, hit me up on Discord, hit me up in the chat and comments below what you think of this, and we can change it up as we go forward. That's the joy of this. Also, my pilot background, I live off of feedback, positive, negative. I almost want more negative than I want positive. Like, I know how good I am. What I need to know is like what I suck at. So please help me with that. So we have security architecture. When you are setting up a network, there used to be, and I want to put my face. There used to be a kind of idea that you just make things work. People need to talk to the internet. You need devices to talk to one another. Well, 40 years later, things have gotten a lot more complex, and we have both cloud and on-premise. So we're going to focus right now just on on-premise and what a secure network kind of should look like. It's not an end-all be-all. Depending on the size of your organization, things might change, but if you were to have a super lockdown network, this could be an example of what that would look like. So let me get my face back out of here. How about that? Everything starts, I think, in the cloud. So up here, the cloud is the internet. Back, I don't know when it started, but when people started making internet diagrams, my dad was a network engineer in the 90s. They used clouds to represent everything that's not in our network, which is why we now call it cloud computing now, because you do computing that's not inside your network. From the internet, we want some things just right there at the beginning. The edge router. A router breaks up networks. So there is the rest of the internet and then your internal network. You need a router there to distinguish the two. Might also need a modem, depending on how you're discussing, how you're passing information. Maybe internally you've got fiber, externally you've got fiber, and you need to translate whatever signal you're getting from your ISP. That'll probably be baked in. It's kind of a given. But most modems at that point don't do kind of have dumb modems. All they do is change the signal from one form to another. Then you get to the router, which actually does any sort of processing. And truth be told, that's when we start kind of talking about the OSI layers. So I'm going to jump from routers, which split up networks, into the OSI model. We can look at building out a network securely based around the OSI model. So our router is going to be split up at the layer 3, the network layer, which is all about IP addressing. Below that, inside the network, most of your traffic is going to be based off of your switches, your MAC addresses, while individual machines will have IP addresses. Your packets and how they are switched all is based off of your tables, your ARP tables, and MAC addressing. Putting IP addresses with MAC addresses, and the switch looks at its different ports and the MAC address that it's going to. And your machine will listen based off of the MAC address on the packet. Like, oh, this is for me, or this is not for me. All of those things can also be made a little bit more secure by having access control lists, either on your switch, which is very normal, sometimes on your router, like, hey, this is not in our network, so send it away. Fairly straightforward stuff. Maybe blocking or allowing different ports by default. Maybe inbound traffic's allowed on these ports, or destination wise. For example, if someone is reaching out, if someone's trying to reach your web server, which is serving things up on 443 or 80, or your SMTP server, which might be serving things up on 25 or 110, those packets are allowed by default without even having to go through a firewall. They've moved a lot of that basic firewall stuff, that first gen firewall, over to access control lists on your just network devices. And now firewalls have been upgraded to do more useful processing, which I'll jump back to in a second. So that is routers. Again, if my strategy today doesn't work for you, if it's jumping around too much, let us know. So we're going to check comments real fast. Chris Ijogbe asked, where do I get the materials here? You can get them on Amazon or the Pact website. And I think I've got links in the comments below, at least on YouTube. I don't think on LinkedIn. If you're on LinkedIn and you have questions, send me a message and I'll answer later when I'm not on stream or not on my dentist appointment later this morning or my meetings. I will get to you. I promise. I always do. I answer all DMs on LinkedIn. And I don't always have useful answers. Sorry, just that's me. That's not you. But I will answer. Yeah, it's available forever. Also, I think I've got a discount code. That's what I was trying to get my bot to do. Is the bot working? Nope. It's just Chris. I think I've got that also below. Anyways, what was I back to? So, edge router connects the rest of the internet to your network. It's at the edge. You might actually have multiple edge routers depending on the size of your network. I know the Air Force Base I was last at, we had, I think, 5 edge routers. So truth be told, all 5 of those were core routers, and they connected us to the outside. They were, again, just multiple connections for redundancy, load, why am I blanking on the word for that? Splitting up the load and leveling so that if one router went down or we got more traffic, they could be spread out and not DOS ourselves, basically. Then you've got a firewall. So inside of the router is then going to be a firewall. And this is, again, your edge firewall. So it allows certain traffic based off of, initially, it was just IP addressing and ports. It grew into connections. And now with next gen firewalls, there is more than just the initial TCP handshake, but it looks at the full conversations and what sort of traffic is traveling back and forth. They can also have signatures added to them and work kind of like an IPS, where based off of known bad IP addresses, known bad domains, some, they might block traffic by default, and all of them can send logs then to your UTM or your SIEM, which is something I will get to next. An example here, we got this great window. The inbound ports might allow DNS queries on 53, web server or to our web server on 443, the proxy on 443, as well as the SMTP gateway. That's a mail or like mail server. Might allow connections for TLS on 587, and then just the connection for the mail itself on port 25. If you haven't set up these services, which is fairly normal, especially since not everyone in security and not every student has been a sysadmin before, you might not be super familiar with these things. If you are at the advanced level, which this book is made for, this exam is made for an advanced security practitioner. That's literally what the acronym stands for, CompTIA, Advanced Security Practitioner. It is the most advanced certificate that CompTIA has, and it's got a bunch of hands-on, but it's also their most expensive exam. I think it's like $460, $490, something like that. Anyways, talked about the firewall. Next, we have the network intrusion protection system. And this could be intrusion protection or your intrusion detection. It's common to have both nowadays. So intrusion detection would look for anomalies in traffic. So known signatures for malicious traffic or malicious payloads. I think of Snort. It's what a lot of organizations, especially the military, use. And Snort updates their signatures very regularly, passes them. And so how your device works is it has its set of signatures. It sees packets come across. If it sees this series of packets that then have the signature matching something in their data in the Snort database, then it sends you an alert of saying, hey, this is something you should look at. It doesn't stop anything. It just says, hey, this is something you should look at. And there's thousands. There are so many Snort rules, and they, again, get updated regularly. I'll answer that in a second. Then you've got intrusion protection. This kind of works like your antivirus on your host. Back in the day, where you downloaded a file, your antivirus went, that's a virus, I'm going to quarantine that or maybe delete it. Well, with intrusion protection, now you're doing that at the network level before you're even hitting the host. So if there's a packet that's got a payload, mostly because processing can happen so quickly nowadays, it can pull things in, be like, okay, this is malicious, I'm not even going to let it anywhere into our network. It's not going to reach your endpoint. We're just going to stop it here. That could be a series of packets. That could be files that are split up between packets. That could be, again, known malicious domains, known malicious IP addresses. And there's more that can go into signatures. Also, like a series of this, then this, then this. Things that don't just look like one file. Some of your more advanced IPSs and IDSs will notice those and either alert and stop them. So that's what the prevention is. It stops them. Nathan Bolin asked, so this would be the professional level as with Cisco CCNP. Kind of. Cisco's got a series of things. But yeah, with CompTIA certs, this is the highest one. If you were to look at your 8570 requirements, because when I think of CompTIA, I think of people who are working for the U.S. military, and because truth be told, getting these certs is usually to fulfill 8570 requirements. So you can either maintain your military or contractor job, or to get a contractor or civil U.S. government civilian job. CASP is the highest. It fulfills a lot of things. I think the next things you would have to do is your ISOC or ISC squareds for 8570. Not like to get any general job. Like, it's a very kind of specific to U.S. military government work. No, it was my screen flashing. Okay, that's really annoying. Thank you for that, Jax. Let's see if that gets better. Appreciate it. Nathan Bullen also asked, would you recommend someone who has been in the last 6 months past CYSA start or wait a little bit? If you've passed CYSA and maybe you're working as an analyst, this would be the next one. This is the only thing kind of higher in CompTIA's rankings of, or their like pathway. If you did CYSA, maybe if you wanted to get the like their pen test plus, if you were like dug into CompTIA, or it's for like, yeah, thing that would work. I'm not a huge fan of pen test plus. I've got the courseware, I've taught the courseware, but there's something I've been doing for 9 months that I believe in. INE and what they're doing there, truth be told, in a few months, Brian Olaf, who is also part of our cyber and security community, he is building something that is INE's version. I'm not even, I think that's a wrong way of saying it. Not a version of CASP, but a competitor to CASP. And it's going to be even better. And now my screen is not even sharing. Restream's kind of pissing me off today. Thanks, Jax. All right. What about this? Because it looks like one thing in Restream, and apparently it doesn't look the same going out. So we'll give this a second. Brendan McGillen, man, I'm sorry. I always butcher your name when I read it. As for an equivalent, I think it's going to be better. The thing with INE certs and INE courses is we believe in hands-on and practical knowledge and skills, not just can you say these things in an interview or could you talk about them, but what can you do? So it's going to be a professional cybersecurity engineer certification. So how would you put these things into practice? How would you set up an IPS? How would you set up rules? How would you update signatures? What would alerts look like? How would you react to them as an engineer, not as a SOC analyst, because we have that, the incident handler cert and course at INE, but more the engineer side of it. When you get feedback, how would you update your signatures? How would you update your firewalls? Not a security engineer. So that's, again, why I'm going through this, because I think of things more from a manager standpoint or from a pen tester or incident responder, which are things that I've taught and more worked with. In the military, we had engineers, and they had a specific job. Just like when I was a pilot, there were things I understood about the engines, things I understood about the hydraulic system that I could explain them. But if you asked me, like, how do you fix it? I'd be like, I have no clue. Like, I don't know what the bushings look like. I don't know what things are soldered, what things are welded, what things are have like threaded nuts and washers on them. I don't know. So that's kind of my standpoint. I can pen test these things. I can take an image and go through and look at packets. But how to like be a good engineer is not something that I'm great at. Also, how to manage and how to set up this whole network, I've been trained and I've done that. So that's, again, why I'm going through this, because it's a new way of looking at things. This actually is available. It's from Pact. It's just the color images from the book. If you have access to the book, then you can get the link. The book itself, I think, costs like $30 on Amazon. You can get the ebook version for a little cheaper, and it's a beefy book. Like, it's also really well done. Mark did a great job with it. If you go to casp.training, just https://casp, CASP .training, Mark's starting to put content out there for free. It's currently just some more exam prep questions and like a few quizzes, but he's planning to put more of these images, flashcards, and a bunch out there. It's kind of following Ian Neal's security plus .training example. Okay, so network IPS IDS. It could be software that you load onto a piece of hardware and install, or a dedicated piece of hardware from a vendor that you put in line, and it's going to, again, stop traffic based off of signatures. There's heuristic based as well, which is less like what does this packet look like, and more what does this series of packets, this series of connections look like, and what does that match. And then you've got your DMZ, demilitarized zone. I brought this up a couple times last week when we were talking about backdoors and breaches, and again, just DMZs. And people were like, what do you mean by DMZ? So it's a military term, or generally demilitarized zone. So the most common DMZ right now is between North and South Korea. There's like, I don't know the details, but there's miles of terrain that no one is allowed to put any sort of weapons. There's a treaty, or ceasefire, and they said, can't put anything here. We've had tons and tons of them over the series, like over civilization. There were ones between Egypt and Israel following the treaty 1948. There were ones between Iraq and Saudi Arabia back in the 80s and 90s, and Kuwait and Iraq, and the Rhineland after World War One. There was a demilitarized zone. There's all sorts of them where you're not supposed to put any weapons. In a network sense, a demilitarized zone is stuff where we can put things out there knowing that it might be slightly more vulnerable. So what we put in a DMZ tends to be maybe your proxy server, where your connection coming in is allowed to go. And then if someone is part of the proxy and authenticates, then they can enter the rest of the network. And so that just presents it. Your web server, if you've got a web server, usually lives in your DMZ. If it lives somewhere not in your DMZ, then you need to move it to your DMZ. And truth be told, sometimes that's just a series of, where did my screen go? Wow. Yeah, I've got a dentist appointment. It's just a series of VLANs and moving certain things over to the DMZ VLAN, which then gets into, okay, well, what is a VLAN? It's a virtual local area network. By using software-based networking, we can set inside of our switches and kind of your routers if they have switching capabilities, or usually you have switches that can do routing capabilities. That's more common. But you can say, hey, this is its own network over here. This is its own network over here. That's how you set up VLANs. And you can also decide which VLANs can talk to which other VLANs, how traffic can flow. Maybe only certain traffic can flow there. So you could control your web server over SSH, perhaps, from internal. And maybe the only way that traffic can flow from the web server back to your network is web traffic. So you can reach it and look at it. You can connect to it via maybe RDP or SSH, but everything else is not allowed. And that could work. Anyone who's played a lot with Metasploit knows that you could also send your malicious traffic over known good ports, like 443 or 80. And that kind of gets around some of these things. Then there's more that we have in place. That's why you also have an IPS. That's why you've got certain types of firewalls, and why we do defense in depth. Because just because you can mitigate or get around one thing, we want to have something back up to try to protect us. So our public DNS server, the web application server, the SMTP gateway, a lot of those things, we want the outside network to be able to see them, so we can get web traffic to our site, so we can get emails and send emails. Usually less sending. Anyways, so we can get emails sent to us without them perhaps being maliciously sent into our network. We can trust our SMTP device and have it send into the network to our individual machines, or we can like POP3 connect to it to retrieve things. But rather than putting it deep inside our network where it's easy for someone to pivot or privilege escalate around, we want to keep that in its own safer DMZ VLAN. It's common to have a switch and then a separate firewall so that you're not just virtually breaking off the DMZ VLAN, but you kind of physically keep it segregated. That way traffic always flows in certain directions off of the switch here. Then you want to have another firewall. So there was a first firewall, another firewall between your DMZ switch and the rest of your network. So you have switch, firewall, switch. And that firewall is going to block a lot of that traffic. And if someone tries to connect to a SMTP server within your internal network, not in your DMZ, that gets blocked. He goes, oh, that's not supposed to go there, and just drops the packets. Again, there's several different types of firewalls, and both apply here. Inside the network, you could also have more firewalls if you find that you really want to segregate another VLAN. There's something that you want to protect more, and you just want to have another wall there of protection. Like, oh, we only really want this sort of traffic going there. If it's made it past one of these other ones, if part of your network were to break in and get into your internal network, you really, really don't want them to pivot into, say, your admin, say your IT, say your internal servers. Having a VLAN for your internal servers, this is then like your mailbox server, your file server, your databases. I know I've got a consulting client who has a Great Plains server. It's a server to run their Great Plains software for payroll and finance, and the CFO uses it. And they have a dedicated server just for that, and that needs to sit over on your server VLAN, where you don't want people to get access to it, and you also don't want people who get access to it to then get access to the rest of your network. So that's why a separate VLAN and possibly another firewall are very useful. Then you can put your workstations into VLANs. Even greater segregation could be having multiple switches and trunking, where you send specific traffic in different directions. That way, perhaps your IT department, it might do certain traffic on its own just because of who we are as IT or security folk. You might have developers and they have their own sort of traffic, and you don't want, if there was an incident or breach there, for that to propagate across to the IT or vice versa. So separate VLANs and separate subnets is very important for segregation of your network. People talked about zero trust a lot, and that's, all of these devices not trusting each other and having to re-authenticate. If you have proper segregation, you kind of take a lot of that into account already. There's some other cool devices. So some things I want to talk about here. A UTM. And I just want to get the correct terminology for that. Unified Threat Management. There are some devices and some software that you could just load on any device that take a lot of these other devices into account and put them all in the same place. That way you have a one-stop shop for a lot of your protection. And I wanted to get to this because I can use it as a pivot point to talk about all the other things that are included. So it could be your router. A UTM could act as a router. It could also act as a firewall. We've talked about both of those and an IPS. Then you've got antivirus. Antivirus is fairly straightforward. It looks at the signatures of malware, well, signatures of files, and if they match known malicious signatures, they get quarantined and deleted. You've got spam filters, which are usually based off of a different type of signature, whether it's a malicious domain that's inbound, maybe it's files or code within the email itself. Those are going to get filtered out as well. If you've got advanced spam filtering, if the same email comes often or goes to all of the addresses on your in your email server, that might be a sign that like, oh, this is spam and could get blocked. You've got data loss prevention. So data loss prevention, haven't talked about this yet, is it's a way of both making sure that you are safe from an insider threat, as well as kind of stops a few attack techniques. So data loss prevention looks at files that are leaving your network. Maybe it's emails that you send. Maybe it's things that you upload to the internet. It could also be just tracking files on a server or tracking files, they're sent across the network. Usually they get sent as an attachment. Also, they could be embedded into a packet. So your DLP solution looks at both connections made, so like your USB connections. I'll tell you, the US military, US government no longer allows USBs to be plugged in, blocks them by default, and only allows them by special exception. There's some devices, trying to see if I've got any USB dongles that when they connect, they don't look like a memory device. They look like a keyboard or a mouse. Those are allowed and they work a little differently. So there are some malicious USBs that look like a mouse, but actually operate like a memory thumb drive and can send code. So DLP it's a hit or miss sort of thing. Similarly, it's looking for certain files leaving. It's maybe marking files and tracking them. And it's a hit or miss kind of technology. Some people love it. Some people say you have to have it. Other people say you're just wasting money. Having the discussion really, to me, is the end goal and purpose there. Looking for questions. Brendan McGill's got one. If you have time, what do you use for imaging desktops, FTK, and what would you use for mobile imaging, if not off topic? It is a little off topic. FTK Imager is the one that I used to teach. It's kind of the gold standard for it. There's others, but when you're building a course, you don't like necessarily cover all the things. Use one as an example, and then once they understand one, usually pivoting to another type of software is easier. So we taught with FTK Imager. Also, it's what all of our customers, all of our students were usually using. Thanks, Jax. I like this shirt too. Last week was Saturday was National Unicorn Day. This is my Deadpool on a unicorn shirt. I got it for Father's Day a few years ago so that I could hang out with my daughters who all love unicorns. And I could have my unicorn shirt. If I'm going to have a unicorn, why not have Deadpool on it too? Sorry, it is off topic. I'm going to cover the last two of these, a WAF and a proxy, and then look at some questions. And then I think we probably will call it a day at 9:30. Jerry's got his stream at 10. First things first. He's also got a stream this afternoon. Man, I can't remember which of is this the call-in? Someone know? Where they're going to be talking about entry-level jobs. Base, you in here? Or Dev? You know what he's talking about? Jax has a stream. Oh, man. I'm sorry. I'm looking forward to I saw it, but I also saw a couple of your streams, Jax, so I can't remember which one's for today. If you put it in chat, I'll mention it. InfoSec Live's got one tonight. Tomorrow is Tipsy Cyber, and is Neil streaming tomorrow? He hasn't texted me to say he is. So look for Tea with a Hacker. If it's on YouTube or in the Discord events, then it's happening probably. But he's traveling right now. And on the Cyber and Security channel, we also have Tuesday nights. Brent is still going through the Python study sessions. Wednesdays, Brandon Krieger is doing Cybersecurity Daily. And yeah, there's a lot going on. Proxy server. That's the next thing that could get included in a UTM. So I'm going to talk about what a proxy server does. Usually a proxy server is that it's a proxy. It stands between you and something else. Often we see proxy servers in web surfing, in that for web connections. In a US military network, it is very, very, very common to route your outgoing or outbound 80 and 443 traffic through the proxy server, or just set it up through GPO that every browser utilizes the proxy server for web traffic. And what that will do is then it can filter. So you could have it so that it blocks certain websites. Maybe on the business network, you don't want people going to Facebook. That was a big thing for the military for a long time. People going to do Facebook at work. And then they'd had to just use their phones. Or maybe you don't want people looking at pornography. You don't want them on Netflix. You don't want them doing this or that, the other when they're at work. A proxy server was kind of initially set up just for that, but it then became these are known bad sites. So people might click on something that then, sends a DNS request to a known bad site. There's a couple ways of stopping that, either with your mail or on your endpoints. But another great one is, because defense in depth, is your proxy, which says, oh, no, that's bad. That's blacklisted. And we're just going to drop that. You're not going to actually be able to reach out to that. It's different than a firewall because it could be specific to a URL. It could be specific to a site within a website, if that makes sense. Proxies can be a little bit smarter and know the contents of your web request. You set them up so that they can decode your GET request, even if it's HTTPS and it should be scrambled. They can usually decode your TLS and SSL so that they can read the headers. It's internal to your network, so that's fine. That's a good thing. Also, it's one of those things of, if you don't want your proxy server to know what your traffic is, then you might want your own VPN, which is usually also blocked inside a network. It's usually a sign of insider threat or someone doing something they're not supposed to do. So a proxy server is that. It's a web firewall. That's how I like to think of it. That's how I've always explained it. It's things that aren't just IP addresses, aren't just ports. It usually has to do with a deeper understanding of the contents of a web request. And the last one we'll talk about here is a web application firewall. So if you are hosting a website or a web app, which a site is just becoming like a static web app. Correct me if I'm wrong, Fraser, but truth be told, that's how I end up looking at it. kind of everything starts looking like a web app. It's just how you interact with it that determines whether it's a static site or something that you're going to get feedback on. Like I'm using Restream, which is an app on the web that's working and doing all this stuff. A web application firewall is going to block attacks to your web app. So if you are hosting a web server, you don't want people to DDoS it. You don't want SQL injection. You don't want cross-site scripting or Java deserialization. Often a web app firewall will look at the incoming requests to your web app. It could be software based. It's very common. Amazon's got a BK. I'm using this one, CAS-004 from Pact with Mark Birch. Amazon's got a WAF for services on Amazon, Cloudflare, a bunch of others are WAF services. There's free ones even, depending on your level of traffic. I know I've used, was it Cloudflare for cyber supply drop? Because it's easy to set up. It just routes your DNS traffic through Cloudflare and then sends it to the final one. So if you've got a form and I don't know, maybe you don't trust your developer, maybe you just want another level of protection, maybe there's many good reasons to have a web application firewall. Because what if, just in case, maybe the software that you're using, when they update it, they include a bug that's a vulnerability, or there's just something that hasn't been found yet. People haven't found like the combination of this, that, and the other that leads to it being compromised. Having a WAF in place just to protect you from, oh, you know what, this is SQL injection. We're just going to block this get or post request. That sort of thing is really, really useful. And often it's cheap and worthwhile. Answer a couple questions. BK Black Knight T2. What book is Josh using? I'm using the CASP certification guide by Mark Birch from Pact. I've got a good deal going with Pact where I started reviewing books and they said, hey, do you want another book? And I was like, sure. And they're like, okay, great. What do you want to read next? I went, oh, well, how about this one? They're like, this book's coming out. Do you want it? And I was like, sure. And I've been doing that for about a year now. Got about a dozen books, some of which I've sent out to you guys. Like Dev's gotten a couple, or got one of my CISP study guides that I reviewed all over the summer. The others I dropped off with Flint Hill School, the school I mentor for their cyber club. Dropped that off on Tuesday, along with a bunch of decks of backdoors and breaches. I'll answer a couple more questions. Brendan also asked, sorry, I'm starting a master's in digital forensics, wanted view and working in the background as watching this. That's cool. FTK Imager is pretty straightforward. If you're using Autopsy, that works great. The technology is getting more and more prolific. So I'm liking where all that's going. Thanks, Chris, for dropping that book. There's a couple other things. Kind of talked about that. There's a neat thing included in here. End-to-end encryption specific to traffic that you can control. And it doesn't get talked about often. It is part of CompTIA's stuff, mostly because, again, targeted towards the US military. We use these things called TAC lanes, developed by General Dynamics, and you key them with specific codes. They get updated regularly, and the management of those keys it's a massive enterprise with like thousands of people around the globe. I've gotten in trouble because I left the vault to the vault to the vault. The initial one unlocked because I forgot to jiggle the handle back when I was a lieutenant. These things are Yeah, very, very secured. But you key up this TAC lane, it's at usually near a series of endpoints near switch to a VLAN, and then it allows connection to the rest of the secure network, and had to be keyed regularly, updated regularly, and are easily zeroized in order to avoid. It's another quick measure for if something is compromised, then all these can be remotely like wiped, and so no traffic can flow at all across the network. Oh, Nate, yeah, InfoSec custodian. You guys had a rough job. All right. Anything else? VPNs. Work VPNs are very, very common nowadays. And it wasn't on that initial diagram, so I want to talk about it now. What is common if you have a VPN to your network? I know I work remotely. So many of you guys are working remotely. If you have to connect to your work network, you're going to do it via a VPN. And that's a virtual private network. It sets up a connection that you have to authenticate with and creates a tunnel for all of your traffic so that any now new requests that you send out actually filter through your work network. Jerry was just talking about this in an interview, the importance of a VPN. As a security practitioner, as a security engineer, as a CISO, you set up the network to protect your clients and your staff and your company. You want to have those security, like that security in place, even if they're working remotely. So having someone connect to the VPN and do their work, knowing that if they get their mail traffic through the VPN, if they even browse the internet through the VPN, they are now protected by all these other things that we just talked about being in place. The VPN server goes through that firewall. There might be a remediation network if something is compromised, and then your intranet services. That's everything inside your network. It could be your mail, could be your file server, it could be your developments server, your SQL database, if you're building out apps or whatnot. All of that's going to be held internally. You want access to that, so you need the VPN. But also now, if you do anything, you are under the protective umbrella that you've put in place for your network. Cool. Any last questions? Brandon's got another one. Could you work VPN, unload, and read encrypted traffic leaving the company? Could your work? Okay, I'm gonna decrypt this a little bit. Gonna try this thing. Ooh. Could your work VPN unload / read encrypted traffic leaving the company? Yes. So if you're connected to the VPN and you've got a web proxy, that is going to read your web traffic and block, going to certain sites, reaching malicious domains, or even downloading, malicious files. So yeah, that's the joy of having people VPN into the network with their work computers. Some of them are common. When I was working for DC3, we connected to the VPN almost initially on startup, and you couldn't do anything on that machine unless you were connected to the VPN. Like I couldn't even surf the internet on its own, or at least, no, it wouldn't let me. And that's a good thing. It both keeps you from doing personal stuff on your work computer, but it then puts you under that umbrella. If the work that you're doing is important to the company, then they want to block that. BK asked, is a tackling a VPN? No, it is an end-to-end encryption device for a network, specific to that network. And when I say a network, I mean like an intranet. Even if that intranet spans the globe, you, BK, I know you were Marine, so you know the difference between NIPR and SIPR. SIPRnet, being the secure internet protocol, uh, spans the globe, and in order to be connected to that, you have to have your traffic encrypted by a TAC lane, and your machine has to both talk to that, and then that allows you to talk across that network. It both maintains port security, so who can connect to that, as well as authentication across the network. But it's not for remoting in. That doesn't exist for those secure networks. What are you gonna change the flower design to a different design? I'll put in a request with my artist. I'll let them know that you're requesting new art. I'll get something new for you. Okay. Answer that. Great. Thank you for being here today. Thanks for being part of the cyber and security community. Join us on Discord. Gonna have Chris drop the link to that on the cyber and security YouTube channel. If you can drop it on LinkedIn, that'd be great too. Join us again next week. I'm going to get into the next section. Again, this is a study session. If you want something more structured, if you want slides, let me know. I was like, ooh, I'll build out slides. I'll make this a whole thing. And then I was like, I don't want to do that necessarily. This allows a little more free form. If you want to dive into the book, if you want to study this yourself, feel free. If you want to take a course on it, feel free. There are some decent, cheap courses. If you want, DM me on LinkedIn and I'll find them for you. Or on Discord. My DMs are open. If you DM me, I will answer. I'm following Neil's lead. Worst case scenario, I might just give you links to some of the things that I've already answered. Like, hey, what's good free training? Like, I've got a link for that. I've got a whole post. But we can discuss. I don't chit chat on LinkedIn. If you want to chit chat with me, find me on the link Cyber and Security Discord, and I way more than chit chat there. I kind of live there. Follow the rest of our channel or the rest of our shows on this channel. Tea with a Hacker on Fridays. Again, the Python study group on Tuesdays, Wednesdays with Brandon Krieger. It's Brent and Brandon Krieger. It's hard to remember. And then Friday night, Tipsy Cyber with Jack. Also look for DJ BSEC. He's part of our community. He's one of our mods, and he is DJing on Twitch. And Jack is doing Jack of all trades. His kind of free flow on the Sec IT Guy Twitch channel on Monday nights. Looks for Jack's this afternoon, and in like half an hour, Jerry on Simply Cyber for First Things First, where he goes over this CISO series dailies. He's got a lot going on, some great content there. He'll also be on this afternoon for a live stream. And yeah, Thursdays are kind of your go-to. Join me here if you like it. First Things First, then back to Jerry in the afternoon. I think Chris Foulon does a Thursday afternoon. Jax, InfoSec Unplugged with Davin Jackson. Who am I missing for Thursdays? That's a lot. There's a lot going on Thursdays if you want to watch InfoSec streaming. And thank you for joining me, because I know I am the least of those. With that, I'm going to give you some outro music, and you have a great day.